Good evening, and welcome to another episode of our never-ending series. And I can continue at any time when I need an open to this show. It's time for another edition of Insights to Greatness with Anthony Strait. Anthony, as we talk about the All-Star game, have you ever been at an All-Star game, and how would you treat a game like that?
Well, if I could replicate Michael Jordan, you just have to stand in front of me with a mirror. I can talk about myself for the next 45 minutes.
Well, the good news is you could also just talk about your Daytona 500 that you won yesterday. Anyway, we
By
didn't
the
even
way,
need to shoot this all. Yeah, don't let's not talk
no,
about that other thing. I sent
no,
you
I
this
want to
morning.
ask, do anybody know who was the driver of that car? Because I have
I
that
know
on
who the
my
driver
feet.
of that car finished in second place last year, but in the race, he's actually a nice name. But I'm not going to mention that right now. We didn't even need to shoot insights to greatness all day. This is a basketball show tonight. Welcome to On the Sports Lines. I'm Steven Rabinowitz. He's Anthony Strait. That's Jay Kaplan. This is the 2026 NBA Midseason Report Edition. Say that five times fast.
No,
Love was in the air.
no.
No, definitely not. Love was in the air 2 days ago, but the basketballs are in the air tonight as the NBA comes off whatever the hell they call their All-Star weekend now. Although shockingly good All-Star game. I enjoyed it yesterday. Really fun.
Interesting format.
Interesting
Yeah.
format, and it turned out that a lot of people played hard, but never give old people the chance to play three pickup games in a row, and that's what you get. The fun game. Doesn't matter though. Fun game. We got a smorgasbord of association talk as they're at the break. Knicks, Nets, Eastern Conference, Western Conference, and a rant on NBA tanking. Put on your helmets. Enlist to On the Sports Lines on Facebook and YouTube by liking and subscribing our pages, or else you'll get drafted. You don't want that. First, the season will resume Thursday, but it will not resume for the point guard Chris Paul. After being released by the Raptors last week, this past Friday, the 12-time All-Star, 14 first-time All-NBA, and zero-time NBA champion decided to call it a career. Was the third part necessary? Let me know. Facebook.com/on the sports lines and YouTube.com/on the sports lines. Give me your opinion. Anyway, the first ballot Hall of Famer has had an insane journey. 7 teams in all, not even including Toronto. But, Jay, what are your memories on the point god's long, strange trip at the National Basketball Association?
Yeah, CP3, the point god, or just plain Chris Paul, no matter how you refer to him. And regardless of whether he was your cup of tea or not, and for plenty of NBA fans, players, coaches, and exec, he wasn't, as he wasn't shy about holding teammates accountable, even in the best of times, which rubs some folks the wrong way. There is no doubt that he put together a resume as one of the 7 players in NBA history with a 21-year career, as Rabbi said, spent with 7 teams, and it's one that's worthy of Springfield. 12-time All-Star, 11-time All-NBA, first team 4 times, second team 5 times, third team 2 times, 9-time All-Defense, first 7, second twice, 2005-06 Rookie of the Year, led the NBA in assists 5 times, led the NBA in steals 6 times, all in a 7-year span. He was the first player to score at least 20,000 points while recording at least 10,000 assists. LeBron James and Russell Westbrook have both done it since. He's a member of the NBA's 75th anniversary team, second all-time both in assists, 12,552, and steals, 2728. Only the legendary Hall of Fame point guard John Stockton has more of each. Paul also won Olympic gold medals playing for Team USA in the 2008 and 2012 Beijing and London Summer Games, respectively. Technically, he's already in the Hall of Fame as the entire Redeem team from those '08 Olympic Games was enshrined as part of the 2025 class, but it won't be long before he goes in on his own as well. He will always be connected to the trade that never happened. New Orleans wanted to trade him to the Lakers after the 2011 lockout ended, which would have paired him with Kobe Bryant. But at the time, New Orleans was owned by the NBA, and Commissioner David Stern put the kibosh on that trade. Wasn't a good look for Stern. Only to allow the team to trade him to the other LA team a week later. Paul would lead the Clippers to 6 consecutive playoff appearances. The only thing missing from his resume, as Rabbi said, is an NBA title. Came close twice. First in 2018 as a member of the Rockets, facing Steph Curry's Warriors. Paul led them to a 3-2 advantage after the first 5 games, averaging 19.8 points, 4.6 assists, 6.8 boards, and 1.8 steals. But he suffered a hamstring injury in the final minute of the fourth quarter of Game 5 and was unable to play Game 6 and 7. Warriors won both and advanced to the NBA Finals. where they swept the Lakers, swept LeBron and the Cavs. Second time, 2021. This time, Paul led the Phoenix Suns all the way to the finals against the Milwaukee Bucks, averaging 18.1 points, 8.7 assists, 3.9 boards, 1.4 steals on 47%, 40.5%, and 90.6 shooting splits. In the 14-game Western Conference playoff run, the Suns took games 1 and 2 before Giannis, Chris Middleton, and Drew Holiday came storming back to take the last 4 and take the Larry O'Brien Trophy, despite a yeoman effort from Paul, who averaged 21.8 points and 8.2 assists in this series. Chris Paul may not have gotten the retirement tour with the Clippers that he wanted. I'm not going to get into him getting kicked to the curb. That was Toronto in a salary dump right before the All-Star break, but he will go down in NBA history as one of the best point guards ever to lace him up. It's a legacy well earned and well deserved.
Come on, Anthony.
Yeah, I mean, you think about Chris Paul, his career is full of accomplishments and a few what ifs. Now, what happens if that trade to the Lakers do go through? What happens if he doesn't
God,
pull his hamstring against the Golden State Warriors in 2018? What happens if the Suns are able to hold on in the fourth quarter of Game 5 in 2021 against the Milwaukee Bucks after dropping Games 3 and 4 of that final series? I mean, there's a lot of things you can say or whatever. There's no question that he's a certified Hall of Famer just on his own credentials. He's in there already because of the 2008 Olympic team. But and I hate to, and I know hell falls over because I kind of agree with Stephen Smith here. But
wait, what?
I said that really fast.
Wow, somebody note the date and time.
Yeah, I said that on purpose. I was hoping someone missed that. But yeah, I hope that I was hoping that he would have had a better send off than what happened toward the end of his latest his Clipper tenure, and basically just a flat out release, and then traded to Toronto, and obviously put on waivers, and decided that's the end. That's the end of the road. When you think about everywhere Chris Paul is gone, he has really transformed teams. You think about the Hornets, when he was drafted Rookie of the Year. At a time, well, they were kind of nomads, like the Saints, because of Katrina, and playing originally Oklahoma City, which gave the NBA the idea of a team being in Oklahoma City, and then we saw what happened with Seattle the Sonics moving to Oklahoma City to become the Thunder. But also, he led them to one of the top records in the Hornets, the top records in the 2007-08 season. He's been on a couple of video games too. The State Farm commercials, which are always hilarious, please. But also, he was a big part of the Players Association. He was a president for several years of the Players Association, and a big part of the negotiations that allowed the league to continue during COVID and finishing that 2020 bubble season down in Orlando, Florida, and Walt Disney World, and putting together and working with the league for all of the COVID protocols and the testing, and to get that season finished up. I always say that the league and the Player Association never really got as much credit as they deserve to making that happen, as far as just isolating making it felt like one big basketball camp experience, for professional athletes still. And I've heard plenty of athletes, NBA players, I was in that bubble, saying how it was the toughest championship to win because of the unusual circumstances of finishing it. But then Chris Paul's legacy is always going to be him being a winner whenever he went, whether it was New Orleans, whether it was transforming the Clippers and becoming Lob City, pairing him immediately with Blake Griffin after that trade, and leading them to several playoff appearances. And remember, 2015, that classic first-round series against the Spurs, he hit the game winner in Game 7, went under 2 seconds left to play in that game. And then Houston, and obviously he played in Oklahoma City and mentoring a young Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. So he has left a mark everywhere he has gone. He's number 2 in assists, number 2 in steals, 36 all-time in points scored, 15th in games played over a 21-year career. I just wish it was a better ending, to say the least, but definitely a storied career that should be celebrated moving forward, and definitely will be celebrated when he's inducted into the Hall of Fame eventually.
And Donovan Mitchell mentioned actually publicly today or yesterday how he should have been given a much better send off, and it was kind of not right the way everything happened with the Clippers. Him getting pretty much having a disagreement with Ty Lue on a road trip, which led to him pretty much being shelved, and then the salary dump to Toronto earlier this week, and then the retirement after he got released from there. Not a lot more that I could say that you guys have basically said. 8 years as the president of the NBA, and also help the WNBA have their last negotiating contract, which is something I think they're going to need in the very, very near future, having some good negotiation. Also hired Michelle Roberts to help out with that, and that's the first woman to publicly negotiate for a major pro sports organization in the United States. Other than that, I would say it's interesting how, again, by the way, player you hated to see on the opposite side. Like the best types of players out there in the NBA are the ones that fans despise because of his play. He is a very fun, interesting player on the court. He is a very traditional player on the court, and is somebody who will try to get away with as much as he can on the court. I'm not saying that as an insult. I'm just saying that as something that is basically, he is a pest out there, but as some of the best numbers out there. It's funny because you did say he's a winner, but it's kind of funny how he gets to the hump and just hasn't really never been able to be the one that got them over. With the Hornets, they got to the seventh game in the the Western Conference semifinals, just couldn't get over the hump there. The Rockets getting to game 7, couldn't get over the hump there. Many times, almost got the Clippers to the conference finals. They got to a game 7 against Houston, couldn't get over the hump there. Oklahoma City, the 1 year when he, as Anthony said, mentored Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. More stuff happened once Paul left, and they finally got everything together. It took a little bit more than just that. Phoenix, getting as close as they did, still didn't get over the hump. So, and also, if you just see what they did, he did some mentoring in San Antonio last year, and now look where they are. So, Chris Paul has a very complicated legacy in the NBA, and it's kind of interesting that a complicated legacy is somebody who leaves the game as complicated in a way possible. No fanfare, no send-off, just pretty much a retirement around the All-Star break. But it'll be very interesting to see what the next step of his career is. It's probably broadcasting. I don't think it's going to be anywhere in the realm of coaching, but Chris Paul is the point god for a very good reason. From his time in Wake Forest, to his time in New Orleans, to his time with the Clippers, to his time almost with the Lakers, but not with the Lakers, and to everywhere else, Chris Paul made an impact everywhere that he went.
It has another thing too. Remember that the night the NBA shut down, and Rudy Gobert was patient zero as far as COVID cases in the NBA. Chris Paul was on the other sideline of the bench asking what was wrong with Rudy Gobert that night. And it was probably one of the more memorable scenes. And we all remember when we were the night the league completely came to a standstill. And Jay, you and I was talking. I was inside Maxwell Garden for the Big East tournament, and I had to run to the courier to hear what she was saying. And before I know it, I got 30 text messages telling me what was going on, because it felt like that night I was in a bubble, and then I got the immediate text from my mom telling me to come home right away, and I knew immediately something was seriously wrong. But that night when I turned on Sports Center and I see Chris Paul coming almost across the court to ask the Utah Jazz what's wrong with Rudy, and the officials tell him to stay back. That's one of the scenes that stuck out of my mind. It's almost like Chris Paul has been part of so many major events as far as his basketball career. I think he would probably say that's probably one moment he would rather not been part of because of what led to everything, but then kind of assisted the separation. Him being the president of the Players Association and working with the league and working with health officials allowed that season to continue and for us to get an NBA champion evidently, and also working around to getting that following season started, which was only 90 days after the Lakers won that championship or so, before camps had opened back up. So his time as a player association should be just as much celebrated in that instance. And I know, like obviously negotiations, as far as the CBA, are always 10 years at best. And Rabbi, you mentioned working with the WNBA as well, which they would definitely love to have right about now. But yeah, Chris Paul on and off the court, just an unbelievable player, and we saw he's a very exceptional human being as well. And like I said, the ending is not the fairy tale we all wanted, but it shouldn't take away from the chapters and the storybook that we can pass along for the next
Yeah,
generation as far as great athletes and great people off the court is concerned.
But man,
indeed.
how cool would it have been if Stern hadn't vetoed that trade? The Lakers would have had a backcourt of
I,
CP3 and Kobe.
No,
I
Come
don't know if that,
on.
I don't know
no.
if two alpha males in that locker room would have
Actually, it would have been
existed.
interesting, but
It would have been interesting.
no, you guys and your teams having multiple stars. All right. I'm sure Chris Paul was probably involved in rumored in a Knicks trade sometime. So here's your transition. I'm getting older. I don't remember these things. New York Knickerbockers come into this season with a huge amount of expectations after their first trip to the conference finals in a quarter of a century. They've started this season 35-20. That's 2 games below last year's pace, half a game behind the Celtics for second in the East, 6 games back for first place in the East. That's the Pistons in the top spot, and they'll play them coming right out of the break in 3 days. Going to do a Star Watch, Stat Watch, and Future Watch, what to look for in the final part of the regular season. Anthony, you weren't involved in the Shooting Stars on Saturday over at the All-Star weekend, but you're our Shooting Star. Give us your Star Watch for the New York Knicks.
I mean, you kind of have to talk about Karl-Anthony Towns. So he's kind of Cappy obvious when you take away Jalen Brunson as being the only other All-Star for the New York Knicks. His numbers are down this season. I mean, you compare to last year, 19.8 points per game, 11.9 rebounds a game. And he's actually second in the league in total rebounds. But his points per game, his shooting numbers are well down from last season. 46% a year ago, and 3-point shooting around 38% this season, where he shot almost close to 50% last year, with actually more attempts. Now you look at it, it's been an up and down first half of the season. Named to the All-Star team, obviously. You mentioned part of the team Knicks that won the Shooting Stars skills competition. Uh, Youngest player in NBA history, 15,000 points. Uh, the big part of the Knicks win the NBA Cup a few months ago, and actually and scored 40 points against his former team, Minnesota Timberwolves, back in December 23rd. But on top of that, there's been frustrations. He has openly talked about finding his place in Mike Brown's new offensive system, which is more focused on moving off the ball and more motion and playing him more like Demetrius Sabonis in Sacramento, where he's playing more on top of the key along the elbow, and using him more as a passer than as a low post threat we saw last year under Tom Thibodeau. But then you looked at some of the other things besides the shooting. It's been the constant complaining with the fouls, and that's something Mike Breen had brought up last week when they were in the MSG telecast. They were playing Indiana, which turned out to be an overtime loss, and I think this is a big part of it too. Was how much was the trade rumors of his name being thrown up constantly, even since last summer, when Giannis made it publicly known he wanted to play for the Knicks. How much did that play into a factor? Because think about this, Carlton Towns openly talked about how shocked he was to be traded from Minnesota to the Knicks, even though technically he was a hometown kid coming home to play for the Knicks and growing up in the New York, New Jersey metropolitan area. But hearing your name and trade rumors nonstop for weeks and weeks on end, it's kind of take a toll. And Towns is someone that even Karl-Anthony has kind of mentioned during the NBC telecast. It was actually Martin Luther King blowout loss to Dallas that he yelled out something to Towns, and Towns heard him and kind of agreed that he might have, what they call rabbit ears, antenna ears, someone who just doesn't do a good job of tuning out outside noise and focusing on the task at hand. But there were other teams that were involved in trade rumors with Towns too. You think about Memphis, Orlando, Charlotte. Coincidentally enough, his dip in production scoring wise is part of the reason that hurt his trade value and why teams might have backed off a blockbuster deal that would have involved Towns. For the second half of the season, I do expect him to kind of be more relaxed with the trade rumors and trade deadline behind all of us. He'll play more like himself. I think he's starting to find his groove again a little bit offensively. Also, I think he's starting to accept his role in the in Mike Brown's system, where he's more of a passer and facilitator. But there's a lot of things that you have to look out for too. Number one, if the Knicks don't win, he's being clearly made as a convenient scapegoat for a lot of Knicks fans who wanted to see Giannis in the Knicks uniform, who has had the nightly frustrations with Towns, driving headphones and drawing silly fouls and pretty much on his ass every 5 minutes. And I went to the game a few months ago, and I think the entire second row of Section 305 overheard me making jokes about why is Karl-Anthony Towns constantly falling on his ass for a guy who's 7'1" and close to 270. And everyone kind of agreed with me and made their own little comments about it. But yeah, I do expect Towns to play a little better, and I do think, and you saw in the All-Star weekend, even that last game against the 76ers, where he scored 21 points, he seemed very much more relaxed. He seemed a little more at ease, and being able to just kind of settle down a little bit. I do expect his production to pick up a little more. The Knicks are going to need it because, as Rabbi mentioned, they're actually 2 games behind the pace last season when they were able to win 50 games. This year, there's a good chance they might fall short of 50 wins because remember the 2-9 stretch in January. But Knicks fans will be happy if at least for a championship one way or another. So Towns is a guy I'm really kind of. I think all Knicks fans are going to be carefully watching because we're getting with Jalen Brunson. You're going to get OG back to start the second half. And the Knicks have definitely made some improvements as far as showing the defense. But Karl-Anthony Towns is the other all-star on this team that has to raise his game up. If the Knicks are going to win a championship, let alone get out of the Eastern Conference, where you have the likes of the Pistons and a Boston and a Celtics team that have been a lot better than people thought they would be this season with no Jason Tatum. And who could get Jason Tatum back at some point.
Yep.
Karl-Anthony Towns absolutely going to have to raise his game up to what he was last season and during his best season with the Minnesota Timberwolves.
What's very interesting is only Towns, they're 9-0 in Towns' last 9 games, and he's only played 27 minutes a game. His usual high this year has been 33. He his first 31 games, he played 33 minutes a game. So his numbers are obviously not at the Thibodeau levels, nor will they ever be, that they were over the last few years. But it's interesting to see his efficiency has moved in. But the fouling just hasn't left his brain, and it hasn't left his brain since Minnesota. It's interesting to see how one part of his game just hasn't really developed yet. And I think you're at an age, you're a 10-year veteran. If you don't know it now, you're not going to know it then, most likely. But we'll see. Miracles can happen. Anyway, Jay, you are up at bat. Wrong show. I know that's next week's show. Stat watch, please, for the Knicks.
Yeah. 1.2, 2.1, 2.8, 2.8. Those numbers are Jose Alvarado's career steals per game, steals per 36 minutes, steals per 100 possessions, and steal percentage. His ability as a pesky on-ball defender against opposing point guards and thief extraordinaire is the #1 reason the Knicks got the former New Orleans Pelican and Brooklyn native at the trade deadline to be the primary backup to Jalen Brunson at the point. His ability to run an offense, 3.1 assists against just 1.1 turnovers, and knock down timely threes. He's knocking them down at 36.3% on 4.7 attempts per game. In just 21.9 minutes off the bench this season were secondary, but no less important, especially with Deuce McBride on the injured list. He's likely out until the playoffs. My focus is going to be on Alvarado's defense. On the strength of that defense and even some of his offense, Alvarado consistently makes his teams better when he's on the court. In all 5 of his seasons, the Pelicans had a better net rating when Alvarado was on the court than when he was off. Since the start of the 2024-25 season, the Pelicans have produced 3.1 more points off assists per 100 possessions with Alvarado on the court versus when he's on the bench. And per Basketball Reference for his career, he has an on-off rating of plus 5.4. As a one-on-one defender, Alvarado excels at forcing difficult shots by those he's guarding. From 2022-23 through 24-25, he held his matchups to a field goal percentage that was at least 2 percentage points below their expected average. It's a little higher this season, but the case can be made that's more about a lousy Pelicans team defense than it is with Alvarado's own defense. He's still ranked in the 88th percentile or better for both perimeter isolation defense and ball screen navigation, according to the NBA's next-gen tight tracking stats heading into the All-Star break. Alvarado's shot contesting and turnover creation will be a welcome addition to the Knicks defense, which is the end of the court where New York needs the help. His go-to weapon for thievery is a sneak steal that is so unique in the NBA that it has its own name, Grand Theft Alvarado. He hides in a corner or stays along the baseline after his team scores, keeping himself out of his opponent's sight when they inbound the ball. Then he walks up behind the unsuspecting point guard and strips them clean. Even veteran point guards with years of experience have been victimized by Alvarado, who's been doing this since college. I watched him do it to many a UNC point guard while he was at Georgia Tech. His ability to pick pockets should generate a few extra transition opportunities for a Knicks team that is currently 3rd in the NBA at 1.19 points per possession in transition, but is just 11th in the NBA in fast break points per game, 25.2, and 15th in transition possessions per game, 21.1, which is directly related to them being only 15th in the NBA in steals per 100 possession, 8.2. In 3 games with the Knicks since the trade, he's consistently manufactured winning plays, whether by knocking down a timely 3, making the right read as a passer, or pulling off a momentum-swinging steal. He's averaging 14 points per game, 4 assists, and 2 steals in 21 minutes per game off the bench. Tied a career high with 8 threes en route to a season-high 26 points, along with 5 steals, 4 assists, 3 boards, and a team-high plus 35 in just 19 minutes in the Knicks' 138-89 blowout of Philly in the Knicks' last game before the All-Star break. Any offense from Alvarado will be the cherry on top of the sundae that will be his top-tier defense. And with Eastern Conference guards like Boston's Jaylen Brown, Philly's Tyrese Maxey, and Cleveland's Donovan Mitchell, and now James Harden, on the schedule, having a backcourt defender who can harass them for 20 minutes per game, either as Brunson's backup or as his running mate in certain situations, is a big shot in the arm for a Knicks team that has Larry O'Brien trophy expectations.
It's interesting what you've seen with Alvarado. Last week, he was the first ever player in history to come off the bench with 25 points, 8 threes, and 5 steals at least. It's an insane stat line for a guy who, by the way, frustrated the hell out of Chris Paul and the Suns when he was with the Pelicans in first round series 5 years ago. So we circled the trade back to that. Okay, so I'm going to list off my second half storyline to watch, and the Knicks are going to be where they are right now. They're going to be the 2 seed. They're going to be the 3 seed. They just can't really fall to the 4 seed. And Anthony is going to talk about that a little bit later with the Cleveland Cavaliers kind of being the team that would jump into that spot. But what you see with this team is they need to figure out what they're going to do with the bench come postseason time. And it's going to start with the guy who hasn't even played yet for this team because they got him in the All-Star break, and Jeremy Sohan, coming from the San Antonio Spurs because they released him outright. He's a lottery pick. He's a 9th overall pick, and he was an all-rookie selection just 3 years ago. But no minutes for him on that team. Carter Bryant was a big part of this team now. So that allowed a guy who had 10 teams interested in him, and he picked the Knicks. So it's going to be a very interesting versatile player on this team. He's 6'8" and 230 pounds. Like the Knicks needed another big rebounder on this team. They have Mitchell Robinson, who's been a beast this year on the boards. And, just the East's leading rebounder in Karl-Anthony Towns is now averaging 13 a game up to this point. Not a position that he can't defend at a high level. If you saw, he was also in the Knicks Christmas Day games last year against the San Antonio Spurs. He was the one with the weirdly colored hair, if you can recall correctly. His personality will be very good for this team. He is a guy who is pretty much in the backcourt the whole entire time, so it's going to be interesting to see what the split is going to be between Alvarado, him, and Deuce McBride, if he's able to come back for any part of the stretch run, but more specifically the postseason coming up. So and is a luxury to a team that doesn't really, once the bench gets any smaller, they're in a little bit of trouble because it forces the rest of the starters to play more minutes. And as we've seen in recent years, the more minutes the starters play, especially in the Mike Brown system,
not
good. But just taking a look at some of the other names on this team, Mo Diawara, who has been a very good defensive player, did some very good defensive work against Jaylen Brown last week. Not sure if he is going to get the minutes, but he is a name to kind of look out for. Jordan Clarkson, who was supposed to be their big spark off the bench this year, has only really averaged 9.4 points a game. You've seen good signs from him, but you've also seen bad signs from him a lot. And a lot of this recent good streak for the Knicks, 9 out of 10, has been coming without really any big Jordan Clarkson minutes. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens for Jordan Clarkson. And Landry Shamet has been one of the big names on this team this year. The team's real drop in that 2-9 stretch came with Landry Shamet not being on this team. Being injured. But he is a big-time three-point shooter. He's been shooting 42% this year through 30 games, averaged 21.9 minutes per game. Again, 25 games missed of a shoulder surgery this year. And Shamet is a free agent at the end of this year. He is improving his value big time, and he is a spark on both ends of the court. This is a Knicks team that needs to be deep because the Pistons are deep, and the Celtics, especially if they get Jason Tatum back in a possible 2-3 matchup, will be even deeper than that. So the bench is the key right now to the Knicks. The starting lineup, obviously health is going to be the key for all teams. We don't need to say that out loud. You can just assume that in your head. But this Knicks team does have a high ceiling. But unfortunately, considering the fact that the last few NBA Cup teams haven't even won a playoff series, the floor is very, very low for this team too. Nothing less than the Eastern Conference Championship will not really make the masses happy this year. All right, we move on. And as for the Brooklyn Nets, man, this rebuilding tanking thing is not fun for you guys, huh? 15-38 at the All-Star break, fourth game's worse than last season's pace. And do you really care about that at this point, considering, shockingly, only the fifth worst team in the NBA, 4.5 games up on this year's Kings of the Tank Captains, the Sacramento Kings. We're so proud of California's capital. We salute you. You know the drill. Anthony Starwatch, player for the Nets, it's gone from the top. Anthony, you have the Starwatch player for the Nets. He's gone from the top of Next Level Kitchen to whatever the level is below the basement. But MPJ is definitely having a season that's actually reclaiming him as a star in this league.
Yeah, well, we saw the hints of brilliance. So Michael Porter Jr. when his time with the Denver Nuggets has been a big part of their teams. And when he was traded to the Brooklyn Nets, you almost knew immediately he would be the focal point of this team, and he's played like it. He's averaged a career high 25 points a game, 7.2 rebounds a game, a little over 3 assists per game. And he missed the last few games during the All-Star break, lightning tendonitis, so that's something to kind of look out for as far as his health is concerned. But again, as far as efficiency is up, shooting 47 in between 47 and 49% range, strong 3-point shooting. And some of his key highlights has actually been against his former team, the Denver Nuggets, 38 points, 10 rebound performance back on January 29th. He scored 36 against the Phoenix Suns on January 27th, and did that without attempting a single free throw, which is even more impressive. He actually led the Nets to a 7-2 record in the month of December, averaging close to 29 a game, 28.4 to be exact. His salary is guaranteed through next season, and obviously, and obviously he has been the guy for the Nets. The problem with Michael Porter Jr. and this is something to look forward to in the second half is one is health. How much is he going to continue playing for a team that's really not hitting anywhere pretty fast? He's had the knee tendonitis. He played with a foot brace. He's run a foot brace off and on this season. Um, there was trade speculation, but I don't think there was a whole lot that was made out of it. And and here's the thing too. He's doing this with a Brooklyn Nets team that we've seen lose games by 40 and 50 points this season. And for any other team rebuilding, he would be a big building block. But do anybody know what the Brooklyn Nets plans are for building this team back up? Because I said this I said this at the beginning of the season during our preview show. I said this last summer in the draft. Dude, I don't think the Nets have a clue what they're doing right now. I mean, they kind of dropped the ball on the whole Cam Thomas situation when they could have moved him last year, gotten more back as far as his value. Now they virtually lose him for nothing.
Don't step on my angle, sir.
Sorry about that. But again, it is what exactly is the Nets doing as far as building this team back up? Because I would think Porter Jr. would be a big part of that. When you see how well he has played this season, and is doing it well for a losing cause, and it's not a situation where you see a player kind of being a stat filler for a bad team. We see Porter Jr. be a part of winning, obviously Denver Nuggets. So we know he knows how to win. He knows what goes into winning basketball games. The problem is now is what do you do to build around Michael Porter Jr.? How do you use the second half of the season to really get the most out, not just Porter on the court, but also do you gauge whether or not he could be a locker room leader? I mean, that's something that is another thing that with a young team, you start to fill things out as far as, okay, who emerges in the locker room as a guy who can set the pace, who can set the trend, who can lead by example, and maybe by words every once in a while. And that's something the Brooklyn Nets are going to have to figure out. But Michael Porter Jr., as far as his game, as far as what he's been productive in, it's as good as it's going to be. And we've seen these glimpses of greatness with his time with the Nuggets, but now we kind of see it to fruition. And now it's just the questions. Biggest thing is going to be what happens around Porter Jr. So it's more than likely he's going to be a net next, at least definitely beyond this season, but definitely next season at the least.
The good thing about it is by the way, Porter is very happy being a Net. Said this week in an interview that he's happy with the direction. He thinks the team is close to be a contender.
Yeah, by the way,
I know what are you supposed to say, but still, at least you're not. You know what NBA players are doing. I know you were about to jump in there, Anthony.
Yeah, I would say this too. He better learn how to either buy a car and drive in New York because I know he's making a lot of money, but you don't want to spend that kind of money on Ubers and Lyfts, getting from point A to point B in New York City every day of your life. So he better learn how to, if he's going to, better how to use public transportation. The subways are a lot cheaper. Get a car, do something.
But you know, he's going to get $44 million this year. I think he's fine going wherever he needs to go. It is fine.
I appreciate Michael Porter Jr.'s support in local businesses, but I think there's got to be a better, sufficient way for him to get around New York City these days.
I mean, I'm sure all of the other Nets can tell him exactly how to invest in other spots because most of them are making the salary minimum. So I'm sure that they're trying to get their Metro card as much as they are using around everything.
OmniCard, Metro cards don't exist.
Yes.
That's right. I forgot. I was in the city this weekend.
Sadly, I had to discover that.
I know. I just realized I was in the city this weekend. I should know about that. I just put my card to the thing and it just says go, and that's perfectly fine when I go to the city every once in a while. Shay, it was mentioned about 5 minutes ago, but let's get into former Net Cam Thomas.
Yeah, so the numbers from my stat watch are 15.6, 39.9%, 32.5%, and 84.3%. And those numbers are Cam Thomas's points per game and shooting splits while he was in Brooklyn. And they're all a huge drop from last season when he led the Nets in scoring at 24 points per game on shooting splits of 43.8% from the floor, 34.9% from three, and 88.1% from the line. In our NBA season preview show back in October, I said that Cam Thomas would be the X factor for Brooklyn this season because it wasn't a given that the skill set of the only returning starter from the previous season's team would fit with what the Nets were looking to build for the future. And based on him being released right before the All-Star break after attempts to trade him fell through, he ultimately did not fit. He started the first 8 games. He averaged 21.4 points per game on 40.2% from the floor, 35.6% from three on 5.6 attempts per game, and 87.5% from the line on 7 trips to the stripe per game. His shooting split were, those were his shooting splits. He averaged 28.3 minutes per game. Was over 30 before he got hurt in game 8. His effective field goal percentage was 46.2. His true shooting percentage was 54.6. Both were below NBA average. With a team high usage rate of 31.6, he was a focal point of the offense alongside Michael Porter Jr., but his net rating was an awful -20. 112 offensive rating, 132 defensive rating. The Nets went 1-7 in those 8 games, with Thomas getting hurt in the 8th game and missing the next 20 games from November 7 through December 23 with a hamstring injury. The Nets went 2-8 in the first 10, but 6-4 in the second 10. A hamstring injury was also largely the reason he was only available for 25 games last season. By the time Thomas returned, he'd lost his starting backcourt job to rookie Igor Demin. He was slotted in as the number 1 scoring option for the second unit, and he struggled in the 16 games he played in that role. Averaging 12.8 points per game off the bench, which splits that fell to 39.8% from the floor, 30.6% from beyond the arc on 4.5 attempts per game, and 80.8 from the line on just 3.2 attempts per game in 22.3 minutes per game. His effective field goal percentage is about the same, 46%, but his true shooting percentage dropped to 51.3 despite a usage rate that was almost the same at 29 flat. His net rating also worsened, dropping to -26, as his offensive rating fell to 101 while his defensive rating improved somewhat to 127. As I said on that NBA preview show, if Thomas has a breakout season where he improves his efficiency as a shooter, which leads to him shaking that empty calorie scorer label, and improves his playmaking to the point where his 32.6% usage rate, which is what it was last year, is more of a positive for the team's overall production and not just his own, then Brooklyn just might see him as a potential cornerstone for the franchise going forward. But if this season was just more of the same as last season, just over a larger games and minutes played sample, then the Nets may see the juice is no longer being worth the squeeze. Thomas chose to bet on himself this season. He accepted a 1-year, $6 million qualifying offer from the Nets. So both parties knew this might be his final season in Brooklyn. He couldn't adapt to his change of role when the team chose to give playing time to the youngsters like Demin, who they hope are the future of the team, which has caused his numbers to suffer, and which is why Cam Thomas is now plying his trade in Milwaukee.
Which is so weird that he ended up going to a team in Milwaukee that has as little future right now, it's seemingly, except for Giannis stock, than Brooklyn does. But
the reason for that, Rabbi, the reason for that is that Milwaukee was one of the teams that was having conversations with the Nets about trade possibilities. They had their eye on Thomas for a while now. So it's not as much of a surprise. They wanted him. It just kind of came, this is just the route that he wound up taking to eventually get there. He's happy there. He's off to a pretty solid start since they don't have a lot of offense outside of Giannis. So he may actually be able to, he's going to get his shots and get a chance to, do what he does when he's actually on his game, which is put up points in bunches.
Which is what's, by the way, Sohan had the same situation. There was a trade that was going to bring him to the Spurs, from the Spurs to the Knicks for Yabusele. But Yabusele went somewhere else and everything. His history. Okay. To steal from Jay, I'm going to give you numbers for my second half stat as well. 8, 19, 22, 26, and 27. Those are the weekly lottery numbers also that I might be playing for Powerball in the near future. Those are also the number draft picks that the Nets had last year for their 5 first rounders. And I'm going to talk about 3 of them now. So the first one I'm going to get to is 8, and that would be the guy who they got from BYU and Igor Demin. Devin's had a decent year so far. He's still a baby, kind of, when he comes. He was being missing, but he's still a baby. Still need to really kind of get his game together from his BYU days. He was not having a great season to start. He was, he was really having a slow start to adjust to his NBA game. But since December, he's averaging 12.1 points, 2.8 rebounds, 3.2 assists per game, and is shooting basically 42% in both 2 and 3-pointers. So all around, he is now becoming a little more consistent. He did miss a little bit of time. He really did shoot the ball well when he was at BYU. He was only 27.3% from outside the 3-point line. Of course, BYU took about 1,750 shots from 3 last year, so that number is always going to go down. But Devin has become a nice little star for a Nets team who, again, has all of these rookie contracts next year, and just one big contract now in Michael Porter Jr. So they have room to improve. It's just a question of where they can improve, and that's going to come up with their draft pick, which, of course, we could talk about a little bit later. But Nolan Traore is another one of those guys. He was also in that draft haul as well. He was number 19 on the board. Traore's season has been up and down. He had some nice big playmaking just last Monday in a 123-115 win over the Bulls. That's posting 13 points and 13 assists. That's his first double-double of his career. For rookies who have played over 500 minutes this season, he has 8.1 assists per 100 possessions. The only 2 rookies who have a better number is Ryan Nebhard and Walter Clayton Jr., both who are so old they can be considered grandfathers because they're 3 years older than Demon. Demon's basically just a rookie. The other 2 were juniors or seniors. Traore has played 19 games off of the bench, had 21 points and 2 steals against the Celtics in a very good double overtime game back in January. The 4 games up into the All-Star break, he's had 12 points in each game and 3 games with 7 or more assists. The last one I want to talk about is Danny Wolf. He's been playing really good. He is a rookie, the 27th pick. And Wolf has actually had the best defensive rating on the team this year for players who have played at least 35 games. His defensive rating is 109.9. Switchable defender, conforms to very good with positionless basketball in this era. And ironically enough, Wolf's stats have been decent. He's scored double digits in his last 4 games, the 4 games before the All-Star break. And ironically enough, Wolf is playing a lot better than his 27th overall standing. This has been a very good draft where there have been a lot of good picks in there. So you have 5 picks in this draft. You're going to see them improve. I just don't know what the Nets want to do with their life right now. It's going to be very interesting to see. There's my buzzword again. It's very interesting. What you'll see in the second half with this team, because they want as high of a pick as possible to get into those top 4 positions. And for every good move that Jordi Fernandez has, bless his heart, he's done some damn good coaching with this team. They then take 2 or 3 steps back and then immediately lose by 40 or 50 because they're playing nobody. They have nobody. And it doesn't seem like management sometimes cares. So we'll see what happens with this Nets team. But many different directions they can go in this second half. Most of them are either down this way, down to the side, down to the corner. Most of them, seemingly, considering the state of the NBA, are on the way down.
Yes, sir.
I would say this: when you walk around the Barclays Center, and there are more people looking forward to an arrival coming to the Barclays Center and the Wrigley Brothers Circus, which is still this week, than the Brooklyn Nets having a home game. That's when you know you're in dark times in the NBA franchise, when people are looking for everything else that's going on in the Barclays Center, looking forward to it. Then you hosting a home game on a given night. So yeah, the Nets right now, it, when so I just tell somebody call me when they figure it out because I can't do it for them, and I know we can't do it for them on this show either.
I don't
Uh,
have Cole waiting, so it's going to be a while.
No, here's what's interesting. A lot of times, a team's record is not completely indicative of who they are for a variety of reasons. They've lost some close games. They've had some injuries. Basketball Reference has a stat called expected wins and losses based on, all the numbers that are and stats that are available at the site's disposal. The Nets record is 15-38. Their expected wins and loss record is 15-38 per Basketball
They
Reference.
they
So, to quote the
are.
late Dennis Green, we
They
are
are
who they
who they
thought they
thought
were.
they were. Exactly what I was thinking about that. So at least expected wins is a completely average for an expectedly bad team.
Yep.
All right, we move on to the segment that is so hot that you might just get arrested for insider trading after listening to it. It's time for buy, sell, hold. We're buying a team in the NBA who's heading in the right direction, selling a team who's not, and holding a team that is kind of where we think they'll stay for the future. We're going to do a Eastern Conference and Western Conference. So for the duration of these next two segments, please make sure your video device is not being tracked or the feds might get to you. Eastern Conference to start. And ironically enough, I barely go 2 times in a row, but I am excited to talk about the Charlotte Hornets as my buy. What?
What?
April Fools. Oh, April Fools is in 6 weeks, by the way. It's not today. Yeah, I mean, in this league where there's a lot of teams who are in that 9 to 10 range, hello Atlanta, hello Miami, hello Chicago, who just never seem to move it. It's nice to see a team who is in that range. They're still 4.5 games out of the sixth spot, but Charlotte is not only one of the hottest teams in the league, they just had a 9 game winning streak in a row where they didn't lose from January 22nd to February 7th. And in the one game that they did lose after that, it was fight night at Denver in Detroit when they played the Detroit Pistons, losing by 6. But not only are they hot, 10 out of 11, ninth seed now in the Eastern Conference, they are goddamn fun to watch. And they don't win these games close, by the way. If you look, they had a 10-point victory on the road against the Rockets. They had a victory against the Spurs. They had a, sorry, Jay, 37-point victory against the 76ers. They've
Yep.
beaten they beat the Magic by 27. They've beaten the Nuggets this year on the road by 23. This Charlotte Hornets team is damn good. It is a team that has been building, by the way, like a lot of teams for years, but now when you have a team that makes a run like this, you are in. Second in three-point makes, 15.4 per game. Fourth in three-point attempts, 41.4. Fifth in three-point percentage, 37.3%. They go to the free throw line a damn bunch, 82%. Offensive rebounds, top 10. Sixth in defensive rebounds, sixth in total rebounds. Defense, they're not bad. They only allow 113.8 points per game. Jesus Christ, I can't believe I said that. Welcome to the NBA in 2026. And again, they go to the line. They don't allow offensive rebounds right now. The Charlotte Hornets are a team that is so young. I don't know how many people on that team are even allowed to legally celebrate any of their victories once they're done. Now, the season didn't begin well, 4-14, but again, they've won 10 out of 11. And again, a 27-point victory against Orlando, a 37-point victory against Philadelphia. When this team wins, they win big. And they have right now the guy who in any other year in our Lord and AD would be rookie of the year in Nipple. But unfortunately, a guy named Flag plays for the Dallas Mavericks, who is just as advertised. Knuble is way past advertised. He was the fourth pick, but he is the first rookie this season to 1,000 points. That is the fourth fastest player to do that in NBA history. The other guys you might know. Zion, 44 games. Wembanyama, 49. Paolo Banchero, who everybody doesn't like anymore, 51. He could be the best shooter in this class. He plays with LaMelo Ball, who hate him or love him, he's still a damn star out there. Brandon Miller, who draws a lot of defensive attention, who's getting better year after year, who was a number 2 pick from Alabama not too long ago. He can score off at the bounce. He is averaging 18.9 points per game, 5.5 rebounds, and 3.6 assists. This is a loaded offense. This is a fun team. And as said before, they scrapped with the Pistons last week in the best brawl that we've seen in the NBA this year. A lot of teams are not really showing the fun in the NBA, but the Hornets, the goddamn Hornets, are showing fun, and they're a team that you need to buy some stock on now. Are they going to drop off a little bit? Probably, but in an Eastern Conference that's locked in positions in a lot of spots, the Hornets trying to make a run to get higher, at least get into a 7 and 8 position and have 2 chances to make the playoff field. If you're the Pistons or the Knicks, do you want to see that team for a 7-game series? No. My answer is not a chance.
Nope.
All right, Jay. Here's the bubble. Here's the Sixers. You're going in the Sixers bubble. It's not moving too much currently. It's stagnant, so you're holding with this team.
Yeah, they are definitely the Eastern Conference team to hold on till we figure out which direction their stock's ultimately going to go in. They're 30-24, currently in the 6th seed in the East. And has any team been harder to figure out than the Sixers? Yeah, I know. The Knicks have had their penthouse and outhouse stretches. But the Sixers have been almost as up and down, just in smaller stretches. Check out their records by month. 4-1 in October. They won their first 4. 6-8 in November. 7-5 in December. 10-7 in January. 3-3 in February. They've had 4 winning streaks between 3 and 5 games, but just 1 losing streak of at least 3 games. They tend to alternate wins and losses, or 2-2. They're quite literally Forrest Gump's box of chocolate. Philly never knows what they're going to get when the team steps on the court, mostly because they don't know who they're going to have on the court, aside from their starting backcourt of all-star Tyrese Maxey and rookie sensation VJ Edgecombe, who have played 52 and 50 of the team's 54 games, respectively, and are the only ones averaging more than 33 minutes per game. Maxey actually leads the NBA minutes per game at 38.6. Now, Maxey has been transcendent, leading the team in scoring 28.9 points per game, 6th best in the NBA. Leading the team in assists at 6.8. That's 12th best in the NBA. And he leads the team in steals at 2 flat. That's 3rd best in the NBA. He's shooting 46.9% from the field, 37.9% from beyond the arc on 6.8 attempts per game, and 88.9% from the line on 6.1 trips per game. The Sixers have truly become his team this season, as he no longer defers to Joel Embiid on nights where both are in the lineup, and even Embiid will say that's a good thing. Edgecombe has been more than advertised, 14.9 points per game, 5.4 boards, 4.1 assists, 1.5 steals over 35.4 minutes per game. He's been the solid defender he was expected to be, and he's knocked down some huge shots to win games. They've had Joel Embiid for only 31 of the team's 54 games. The team is 19-31 in those games. Started slowly, missed most of November, played only 7 of the team's first 19 games as he worked his way back from the injuries that derailed him last season. Not consistently playing 30 minutes a game until his 9th game in December. He's finally ramped up to the level we're used to. He's played 17 of the last 23 games. The team's gone 12-5 in those games, and the former MVP is averaging 34.2 minutes per game, 29.9 points per game, 8.1 boards, 4.5 assists on shooting splits of 53.5% from the floor, 39.7% from beyond the arc, and 86.8% from the stripe. He's been the NBA's leading scorer since January 16th, averaging 33.1 points per game. Paul George, they've only had him for 27 games. He missed the first 12 of the season while recovering from off-season knee surgery on his left knee. And then he got suspended for 25 games for violating the NBA's drug policy, which he said was due to taking an improper medication while being treated for a mental health issue. That's going to keep him out until March 25th. The team was 16-11 in those 27 games he played, but he was finally rounding into form over the last 21 of those games prior to the suspension. 32.9 minutes per game. He was averaging 16.7 points, 5.2 boards, 4 assists, and 1.4 steals. Shooting splits of 42.7% from the floor, 38.8% from beyond the arc on 6.6 per game, and 89.7% from the stripe. The team was 12-9 in those last 21 games. The big three of Maxey, Embiid, and George have only played 365 minutes and 33 seconds together this season and are just plus 5.4 points per 100 possession. That is the 10th most minutes and the 6th best net points per 100 possession by any Sixers three-man combo this season. The Sixers are just 7-9 in the 16 games they've played together, but they've gone 7-5 since starting 0-4, including a 4-1 stretch early in January when the trio started 5 consecutive games together. They've gotten some solid production from their cast of role players, like starting small forward Kelly Oubre Jr. He's had a dozen games of 18-plus points. He's been a solid tertiary scorer since returning after a 22-game stint on the injured list. Combo guard Quentin Grimes. He's been solid off the bench with per 100 possession numbers of 20.6 points per game, 6.1 boards, and 5.9 assists. Combo forward Trendon Waterford, who has per 100 possession numbers of 18.3 points per game, 10.1 boards, and 7.8 assists off the bench. And power forward Dominic Barlow, whose two-way contract has now been converted to a standard NBA deal, has also been solid off the bench. His per 100 possession numbers, 17.3 points and 10.1 boards. If they can keep Embiid healthy, if Maxey doesn't wear down during the stretch run, if Edgecombe doesn't hit the proverbial Wookiee wall, if the role players can continue their solid play, and if George gives them a boost when he returns, then the Sixers could conceivably find themselves in the East top 4. They're only 2.5 games back of the 4th place Cavs at the break, which would allow them to secure home court for at least the first round of the playoffs. Then again, they could just as easily fall out of the top 6. They're only 1.5 games ahead of 7th place Orlando and 2 ahead of 8th place Miami. Like I said, Philadelphia is literally the NBA's version of Forrest Gump's box of chocolate. You just never know what you're going to get.
By the way, 19-12 for Embiid. You said 19-31. I just wanted to. That's what I figured it
19,
was.
I wrote 19-12.
Yeah, 19-31. It's, by the way, as I said before, McConaughey, I'll say it again. In any year of our Lord, 2026, it would not. VJ Edgecombe would be a very good choice for Rookie of the Year. He has been as advertised. By the way, F's in the chat for prescription P's 25 game suspension. F. All right, moving on. We are talking about the team to sell on, and Anthony. I know James Harden usually means sunshine and rainbows for a new ball club, but
you need a towel for that sarcasm dripping out of your mouth.
Sorry, I did use an emoji to describe it, so I can't tell you it's sarcasm immediately. But the new addition and other pieces are having you sell on the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Yeah, the Cleveland Cavaliers has been definitely a team that you consider a step back from last year. You wonder how much did the loss in the Indiana Pacers last year's playoffs really take on the sales of this team. But no, at the halfway point of the season in mid-January, they were 23-19. They were just barely kind of treading water. That is not the fault of Donovan Mitchell. Donovan Mitchell was averaging close to 30 a game and close to 60 a game. And it's not been the fault of Evan Mobley, who was averaging close to 18 a game offensively and 9 rebounds, 2 blocks a game. And currently they ended the All-Star, going to the All-Star break on a 5-game winning streak and won 11 of the last 12 games to go to 34-21 heading into the break. Excuse me. But then during the break, they made a couple of key acquisitions, not just the Harden deal, which I'll talk about in a minute, but they acquired Keon Ellis, Dennis Schroeder to kind of help to get them some kind of some depth. And when I look at this team, they're not anywhere, and you wonder why they struggle so much in the first half of the season. They're actually last in the NBA in opponent 3-point percentage as far 38.2%. Opponents have made 23 pointers in 5 different games this season. That's as of January, obviously just past January.
Mhm.
They were once a top 10 defensive unit. Now they're outside the top 15 in defensive rating. I think Okoro was such a big part of that team defense being so good last year. He's not there anymore, so you wonder how much his absence has hurt that team. Despite having Evan Mobley and Jared Allen, the team has struggled defensively. They've been out rebounded several times this season. They're near the bottom of the league in free throw percentage at 76%. Some of that is Evan Mobley. Some of it is the now departed Lonzo Ball was no longer with the team, was traded to Utah and then waived during the All-Star break. And they've had mental lapse on as far as transition defense. They've been an up and down. They were an up and down team until this current winning streak. And now it brings me to the James Harden trade, which, look, offensively, James Harden at 36, he's several years old. He's obviously older than Darius Garland. Garland is much younger, but did have the big contract, has had problems staying on the court this season with the foot and toe injuries. So I understand the trade being made, but now you get the situation that you had when you had Garland on the team, and now you have a backcourt that may be good offensively, but not good defensively. Donovan Mitchell nor James Harden has been known to be defensive stalwarts throughout their careers, and now Kenny Atkinson has a situation where he's going to be finding himself mixing and matching lineups just to kind of figure out what works in late game situations, offensively, defensively, and also just as far as being able to cover up some of the team's shortcomings. They have not done a good job rebounding the ball this season. Especially when you have Jared Allen, a former All-Star, Evan Mobley, who could have easily been an All-Star this season with the numbers he's put up. And on top of that, you have James Harden, who, look, the good with James Harden is that he can be a scorer and a facilitator. He's going to help out a lot as far as taking the offensive load off of Donovan Mitchell, as far as facilitating the offense. But defensively is where this team is really going to struggle. And you do wonder, they stay in that 4 spot and they get a second round matchup with the Pistons. Just how exactly they're going to fare trying to keep King Cunningham in front of them for 48 minutes when they realize neither of these guys can stop anyone defensively. And that's why they made the trade for Dennis Schroeder. But Schroeder only gives you, at this point in his career, can only give you so many minutes off the bench. And you don't want to have him in late in games outside defensive situations because you want to keep Harden and Mitchell on the court. So the reason why I'm selling on the Cavs right now is because I'm not convinced. I know everybody kind of jumped on the bandwagon with the James Harden deal, but we've seen throughout James Harden's 17-year career, his playing style has never really translated into winning basketball in the postseason. We've talked about the Rocket teams and the Rocket team in 2018. That's really the furthest he has gone in his career as far as being close to sniffing a championship. But I'm definitely not all in on the Cavaliers. I'm selling. I think the team that they were from October to January is more of the team of who they are now, as opposed to the team they've been the last few weeks with this trade and this current winning streak.
Winning streak has been 10 of 11. I mean, and I think this team is averaging to the mean right now, but it's weird that a team who had all of those problems in the postseason with health and stuff decided that the biggest fix was Lonzo Ball, who ended up making no sense with this team whatsoever and was just a dud of a trade. So we're going to see, because this team is also very, very lacking in depth, because a lot of the trades that this team has tried to make over the last few years have not paid off depth-wise.
Yeah, but by the way, DeAndre Hunter definitely did not work out for this team, and
No, did not.
And the caveat to moving on from him is that, yeah, as you said, it left them literally, no, they don't have any depth in the front court, and that's another issue. What happens if Mobley or Jared Allen even gets hurt or in foul trouble for whatever reason? You don't have a whole lot up front to kind of contend with the big bodies in Detroit. The Knicks front court, obviously,
And the
with their
Celtics
rebound
depth.
and a Boston Celtics depth who got a lot better with the addition of Kristaps Porzingis and a guy who can stretch the court as well. So the Cavs have a lot of problems, a lot of issues that Kenny Atkins is going to have to figure out in these final 35, 36 games after the season.
Yes, sir.
Very interesting thing. By the way, it's not Porzingis that you're thinking of. It's Vucevic.
Vucevic, yes. Vucevic, yes.
Yeah. All right. On to the Western Conference, where you currently need a 600 winning percentage to have a top 6 guaranteed playoff spot. And to make sure you're out of the 7 to 10 zone in the middle, you need a below 400 winning percentage. So little bit of parity over there. Jay, you are buying a team whose 38 wins currently at the breakup already topped their win total over the last 4 seasons, and that is the resurgent San Antonio Spurs.
Yes, sir. They are 38-16, currently residing in the number 2 spot in the Western Conference. And I'm going to have to check the exchange rate of francs to dollars because San Antonio's return to their Tim Duncan era position of being among the best of the West is due to the NBA's version of a unicorn, third-year French phenom Victor Wembanyama.
118, by the way. So you're getting a good deal this week.
There you go. Thank you. Who is averaging 24.4 points per game, 11.1 boards, 2.8 assists, 1 steal, and an NBA best 2.7 blocks per game. And he's doing it in less than 30 minutes per game, with shooting splits of 51.1% from the field, 36.3% from beyond the arc on 5 per game, and 81 flat from the line with 7.3 trips there per game. Here's how sick those numbers are. Per 36 minutes, they work out to 30 points per game, 13.7 rebounds, 3.4 assists, 1.2 steals, 3.3 blocks. Per 100 possessions, that works out to 40.3 points per game, 18.3 rebounds, 4.5 assists, 1.6 steals, and 4.4 blocks. He leads the NBA in defensive rating, 103, and defensive rebound percentage, 33.2. He's third in player efficiency rating at 28 flat. And box plus minus 8.8. He's 7th in the NBA in usage rate at 32.2. All this despite missing 12 games from November 16 through December 10. This kid is so sick that he dropped 25 points in just 8 first quarter minutes last week against the Lakers. It's the most points by any San Antonio Spurs player in a single quarter in the play-by-play era per stat head. He is also the first player in that era to score 25 points in under 8 minutes. The All-Star starter finished the first half with 37 points in 18 minutes and 19 seconds, topping Duncan's record for most points in a half by a Spur in that span. It was also the most points in a first half in the NBA this season. He played just 7 minutes and 37 seconds in the second half, all of it in the third quarter, scoring 3 points. So thus he finished the game with 40 points on 13 of 20 from the floor, 4 of 6 from 3, 10 of 12 from the line, along with 12 boards for the 6th 40-point game of his career on the Spurs' 136-108 win. Sleepy Floyd and Patrick Ewing, a couple of former Georgetown Hoyas, are the only other players in NBA history to score 40 points in under 27 minutes per The Athletic's Dan Wyke. How about that? Wemby has not done it alone, though. The Spurs have 10 players who've played at least 40 games. 9 of them are averaging at least 21.7 minutes per game, and 8 are averaging better than 10.5 points per game. The backcourt of De'Aaron Fox and Stephon Castle has been as good as any in the NBA, combining for almost 36 points per game, though they've only played a little over 624 minutes together. Fox missed the first 8 games of the season, but has only missed 1 since coming off the injured list. He's averaging 19.4 points per game, 6.3 assists, and 1.3 steals. Castle missed 9 games from November 18th to December 5, but just 1 since returning. The 2024-25 Rookie of the Year is averaging 16.5 points, 5 boards, 7 assists, 1.3 steals, and on February 7th, he joined David Robinson as the only Spurs players to put up a 40-point triple-double. He scored exactly 40 on 15 of 19 from the floor, 3 of 5 from 3, 7 of 10 from the line to go with 12 rebounds and 12 assists. He threw in 3 steals for good measure and did it in all of it in just 32 minutes in San Antonio's 138-125 win over Dallas. The Spurs have already won the season series against OKC 4-1. They averaged 114.4 points per game against the Thunder, and they only allowed 109.2. They opened the season with a 5-game winning streak, had an 8-game winning streak in December, and went into the break on a 6-game win streak, and have not lost more than 2 games in a row so far this season. They're 7th in the NBA in points scored per game at 118.1. and points allowed at 112.2. They're 8th in offensive rating at 117.7, 3rd in defensive rating at 111.8, and number 5 in net rating plus 5.9. Their post-All-Star break schedule isn't a stroll down the Riverwalk. They have 8 games against Eastern Conference teams, currently in the top 8 and all above 500, including 2 each against the Pistons and the 76ers. They have 3 against the Nuggets, who trailed them by 3.5 games and are coming on. 2 against the Suns and 1 each against the Rockets and the Warriors, all of whom are above 500 in the West's top 8. They do get 7 games against the Kings, Nets, Mavs, Bucks, Bulls, and Pacers, which helps a little bit. They are maybe a youngish team. They have 8 players with 3 years or less experience, but as long as their backcourt and Wemby stay healthy and productive, I like their chances to finish no worse than the 3 seed in the West. That's definitely worth buying up all the outstanding Spurs stock available.
I think they're the 2 seed in the West, and honestly, the way that they've played in those games against the Thunder, treating it pretty much like Western Conference Finals games in all 3 of those games, especially those 2 games in that 3-day span from the 23rd to 25th of Christmas of December. They're for real, and I there's not a lot. The only thing that could really stop this team right now, in my opinion, is injuries.
Yep.
And obviously one of the best constructed teams in the NBA with the Thunder, but a 7-game series between the Spurs and the Nuggets, a 7-game series between the Spurs and the Thunder, a 7-game series between the Thunder and the Nuggets. Sign me up for all.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Let's go right now.
Yep, I'm putting my pen to paper. Okay, Anthony. Time to hold. And for a team who has been living in a top 6 position over the last 3 seasons, as a 2-time reigning Western Conference runner-up, the bill is for holding is pretty much fit for the Minnesota Timberwolves, don't you think?
Yeah, Minnesota, and here's the thing. I mean, they got a lot of good on their team. Anthony Edwards playing like as an MVP candidate without question, averaging 29 points a game. We saw it also weekend. He's his feelings has never been as far as being that guy. Rico Bell is anchoring defenses in the top 10. Julius Randle's having a bounce back season. They averaging 22 a game. Make an argument that he could have been an all-star this season, even as a replacement with his production. But then you look at some of the things that has happened the Timberwolves that they try to address in the trade deadline. Traded for Ayo Dosunmu and Julian Phillips to kind of help with the backcourt situation. In a strange situation with Mike Conley, when they traded him, he just waived and signed him back to pretty much the rest of the season on a veteran's minimum. But yeah, the Minnesota Timberwolves defense has struggled in the minutes where Rudy Gobert is not on the court. When they maintain a 108-point defensive rating with him on the court, it plummets to 118.3 defensive rating the moment he sits down, even for foul trouble or even to take a break and drink some Gatorade for 5 or 10 minutes at a time. Late game execution has been a bit of a problem this season. Head coach Chris Finch has had a problem with this team having mental lapses down the stretch of games, defensive meltdowns. One national televised game against the Knicks, they completely fell apart in the second half and allowed the Knicks to turn a close game into a rout earlier this season. The lack of bench depth, that's obviously something they try to address at the trade deadline. They're the bottom of the league in free throw shooting with 74%. And another thing that has hampered the Timberwolves has been the inconsistencies with the effort and keeping the gas on the pedal as much as any day. But we also, why it's kind of an iffy 50-50 with the Timberwolves is that, yes, they are 2-time Western Conference finalists who got to the conference finals back-to-back years. But when you're in a conference where the Thunder has clearly established themselves, they're the defending champs. The Spurs are definitely the second best team in the Western Conference. And then you throw in the Denver Nuggets, who are ahead of them in the standings. And if they have a healthy Jamal Murray and a Nikola Jokic, That's a team that is very. Those are three teams right there in itself that's very tough to beat. I don't see the Timberwolves on that level. I see them kind of like a next level down. Um, as far as the Western Conference, and Rabbi, I'll set you up with your angle. There's another team that I'll put in that second tier level as far as Western Conference contenders are concerned. And if you go by a guy named LeBron James, yeah, they have their own issues to deal with.
Well, I mean, and yes, it is not a legally obligated NBA show unless you talk about the Los Angeles Lakers. That is for what we have by law.
Contractual obligations. Yeah.
So we have to talk about them here. They're my team to sell
Mhm.
because, number one, anybody outside of the top six are just not worth talking about because they're boring as hell. And I think out of the teams that are in that group, I think that's the team with the possible biggest chance to blow up. Mentioned, by the way, Jay mentioned that Victor Wembanyama game earlier. The Lakers let up 84 points in the first half against the Spurs. They've never done that in a single half in team history, kind of a deep team history. So I'll give you the good first because, again, we legally have to mention that they're still a damn good team. They have Luka Doncic, and yes, he is averaging 32.8 points per game. That's first in the league. 7.8 rebounds a game. That's top 25. And assists, 8.6. That's third. Had a little bit of a hamstring injury. He's recovering from that enough that it's probably, he played a little bit in the All-Star game. So he should be ready to go by the second half. He might have to take it a little bit more and more. But then Luka's got this guy on his team. I don't know. It's called named LeBron James. And even though his all-star starting streak ended this past week and his all-NBA streak has ended due to the 66-game minimum that you need to be on a team, LeBron James is still doing his thing. 22 points per game, 5.8 rebounds a game. And if you're consistently hearing the words "the oldest player to blank," it's probably LeBron James. Last week it was oldest player to have a triple double in a game, having 28 points, 10 rebounds, and 12 assists, and 1 block against the Dallas Mavericks. And then you have Austin Reeves, who, if there's a big three on this team, he's number 3. He's been injured a lot in this first half, but he's had a 51-point performance in a game against the Kings. And then just a couple of weeks ago, Jay might realize this game, he came off the bench for 35 against the Sixers. And he had a 5.5-week calf injury. Austin Reeves is going to be a very special player, and he is going to get paid whenever he is up for a big contract, which is soon. However, two things that are a big problem with the Lakers. That is why I'm talking about it. The defensive effort has not been there. The team has dropped into defensive efficiency. They're in the bottom third of the league. Defensive ratings hovering around 117.7. They don't do well around the perimeter. Their lineups with Luka, LeBron, and Austin Reeves allow 117 to 124 points per 100 possessions. They have some stretches, but this team is really made by their offense, ranked 7th, but they have very bad defensive shortcomings. And oh yeah, their bench is terrible. It's simple as that. I think I saw it a little bit in a game against the Knicks on the Sunday night game back in the beginning of February. Their bench is only 24.9 points per game. The next team that's closest is 5 points higher. That's the next team. The team who's the top of the league is the Memphis Grizzlies with 46.8 points per game off of their bench. Their bench isn't good. Their bench is just not there. You've seen people like DeAndre Ayton, who they tried to take a stab at. He's been almost unplayable at the end of games. Rui Hachimura is very, very all over the place. Marcus Smart is not even anywhere near where he was as a Boston Celtic back in the day. A bunch of his moves just haven't worked out when he was often injured with the Grizzlies. Jackson Hayes, not really. Jared Vanderbilt needs to be a little bit better. It's a team that is just inconsistent in so many different ways that while Anthony is holding on a Timberwolves team who has the promise, they've been to the conference finals the last few years. Things could break for them. As we saw in the series with the Lakers and the Timberwolves last year, when it goes bad for the Lakers, it goes bad for the Lakers. We've heard JJ Redick publicly put this team under the bus for all of their defensive performances this year. This team does seem like the Lakers of our lives soap opera that comes out every single year. This might be LeBron James's last year as a Laker. And that rumors will always persist. So take your Los Angeles Lakers stock, find the nearest bust family member to sell it to, because it's a big old sell for me. I just don't think the Lakers are championship contenders this year. I think there's a big schism between the top three and everybody else. All right, we move on to our last piece of business tonight. It's a sensitive NBA subject, and I'm going to try to talk about it. I'm writing this rant. I wrote this rant as I was watching the NBA All-Star Game, as I want to talk about something that people are used to when watching the mid-season event. Minus yesterday, it's time for some bad basketball, especially tanking. While tanking is seemingly talked about in all sports, you can't mention the New York Jets or Giants after December without hearing a portion of the fans who mention that, hey, they really need to lose this game. What are we doing playing Astadas? We call it Tanksember around these parts. But the NBA always taken the tank job to shameless new heights, even with their lottery system in this game, not rewarding the best record automatically with the number one pick. Take a look at the Dallas Mavericks, for example. Not just saying, just saying. With the stacked 2026 NBA draft class that has a significant drop-off after the fourth pick, in my view, the games are like, whose line is it anyway for some teams? The points truly don't matter. Just take a look at some of these examples. You can get your conspiracy theory board coming over here. The Washington Wizards, just a little over a week ago, barely fielded a minimum amount of players against the Brooklyn Nets. The Wizards picked up Trae Young and Anthony Davis in trades this year, and it pretty much decided that they're worthless for this season and are shelving them. By the way, the Wizards lost that game, giving up 80 points in the first half. It was to those same Nets who sat their three biggest stars in their last game after the break in Michael Porter Jr., Nick Claxton, and Noah Cloudy. They played the Pacers in that game, who were playing without Pascal Siakam, Andrew Nembhard, Aaron Nesmith, and TJ McConnell for soreness reasons or injury management. By the way, the Pacers won that game, 115 to 110, but for the Nets' purposes, they probably won that game in their mind. Oh, and the Pacers also held out All-Star Siakam and two other starters in the February 3rd game against the Jazz, which the Jazz won, and then an NBA investigation found out that those three could have played. The Pacers got fined. Of course, in that same day, the Jazz also got fined in the NBA for having the franchise removing stars Lauri Markkanen and Jaren Jackson Jr., who they got into trade from the also seemingly tanking Memphis Grizzlies after the third quarter in a game against the Orlando Magic on February 7th and February 9th. Jazz were leading in those situations when they took the players out. They actually won the second game. And there, my friends, is the circle of tank. There have been other teams who have made efforts that have been noticeable. The Mavericks, the Bucks, the Pelicans, the Grizzlies. They're also seemingly in that tank zone time and time again as well. Notice I didn't mention the team who actually does have the worst record of the Kings. They try, and they're still pretty shitty. Pretty impressive. Why do teams do this? Okay, here's the logical reasons. One, some teams try to keep the protections, get rid of them, they have on draft picks that they're getting or have not traded away, or at least make it top 4, make it top 10, and do nothing else after that. If you get a protected pick from the Wizards, you might not see that pick activated until 2039. But hey, Jay, trust the process.
Yeah, okay.
We really give almost as much crap, if not more, for the teams that really try. The Hawks, Bulls, and Heat have been in the play-in so many times that they have a timeshare on Play-in Island. While the play-in was supposed to be associated with getting more teams a chance at postseason play, it's seemingly been more associated lately with stagnation. Now, 3, sometimes it actually pays off. The Oklahoma City Thunder had to go through years of pain before winning their first title last year with a ton of lottery picks on the roster. The Pistons' fortunes finally started to turn around when they got Cade Cunningham with the top pick in 2021. Now the Pistons are the best in the conference. The Spurs went from multiple play-in years to finally bottoming out for a 4-year stretch in which they got generational alien Victor Wembanyama and have built a team that's not just ready to come back to the postseason, but they're there to be a title contender. Due to the NBA's massive talent influx. It could be the global game, it's the 1 year requirement of college players developing people's games, or just the development of everyone lately. This is the bed that the NBA and the worst commissioner of the four major sports, Adam Silver, has made. It's an embarrassment of riches that has just become an embarrassment. And while a knee jerk reaction move might be the possible stripping of draft picks, getting rid of the lottery aspect, the Orlando Magic are just waiting in anticipation to get the pick back to back and back to back years. That's the last time they didn't actually have a real lottery. That's how they got Shaq. That's how they got Chris Webber and traded him. Or, oh my God, big bad fines are coming. Ooh, more money for teams that can afford it. This just leads to a bigger problem that has spouted out for years and could have easily been nipped in the bud. Again, the Sixers did this in 2013 and did it for a 3-year stretch. They intentionally lost to build themselves back up. That seems like a generation ago now, and it says, and this is still a problem. So guess what, Adam? You can try to suppress tanking all you want, but as long as these options are available, this will happen and again and again and again and again and again and again in its most blatant form. Adam Silver might be smart, but the owners and teams he works for are smarter. Maybe he could solve it with another tournament to misdirect the fans for a few weeks, or maybe just another KD burger account. Anthony, go ahead.
I don't know like how do you follow that up, but yeah, it does feel weird. Like to we get on the NBA about tanking, and it was just like a few months ago, the same sports media that was questioning Adam Silver during All-Star Weekend, where the same people kind of beat up the Giants for not intentionally losing a game to the Raiders, who were so bad that they couldn't even hide the idea that they were tanking. They're just that bad of a team. But yeah, the NBA's been going through having this problem for years. I mean, we've seen this for the longest of times. It just the thing is, it's the system that they created within themselves, and it's become the problem that they created for themselves. The problem with the NBA and all the other major sports, it's not the teams that have their advancement of riches. It's the teams that are the don't haves when they're really the haves that don't want to spin at all or don't want to try. So in the case of the Jazz, it was just so obvious that they were tanking and it was pretty and we saw them a couple of years ago. The Mavericks intentionally intentionally sat their players has to not give up a draft pick to the Knicks that was in the that came up late in the season. So we've seen this situation come up for years, and I don't know if there is a surefire way to solve it because it is the system that the league and the player association created within the confines of the rules, and the owners have just been smart enough to kind of fleece it as much as they can to get what they wanted. Now it's a question. Now it's a question of whether or not you see teams like the Jazz, the Wizards, and even the Nets we talked about earlier, if they actually do something with the embarrassment of riches, they get rewarded for just being such really bad and excuse my language, really bad, shitty franchises for long periods of time without actively trying to be a competitive basketball team. Um, and it's just like I said, it's a strange situation to kind of deal with, but the league have no one to blame but themselves. I mean, the playing tournament, you mentioned the Eastern Conference, it's been the same three teams. It's been Chicago, it's been Miami, it's been Atlanta. Literally, since the beginning of the playing tournament, it's been those three teams that has taken up most of the playing tournament spots every year since then. Finally, I even said the Chicago Bulls finally bit the bullet and blew it up. They're trying to finally start rebuilding. But the problem with the playing tournament is that now you have a team that's competing for a playoff spot that really should have no business competing in the first place. And they're stuck in kind of like that in between perjury and just that
Purgatory, yeah.
purgatory and just being just a team that needs to bottom out. But the whole thing and about tanking, we see this in other sports too. I complain about Major League Baseball for years with the teams that just don't want to spend any money as far as putting a winnable product on the field. I said that with the Marlins, with the blown up championship
Colorado,
teams,
Pittsburgh,
Colorado, the Pirates, who I still say are going to lose Paul Skeens at some point.
eventually. Yes.
Eventually, it's going to happen. They've already lost Garrett Cole in the same circumstances. And it's we see this in the NFL. In the NFL, except that the NFL has a system that awards a team being so bad that they can that in a year in a sport that is year to year where you can actually go from bad to good in a short term, it actually rewards a team. It kind of encourages them to get better under a short time. The NBA is gonna have to figure out a way to come up with some way to minimize the obvious taken, but at the same time, will not take away things like the draft lottery and the draft altogether. They take that away from teams who are just not good, but they're trying to actually find ways of building a team from the ground up. Because now you got to think about this with the first and second aprons with the collective bargaining agreement. You can't go out and spend on top players like you could 10, 20 years ago. So now you gotta build through the track. The Oklahoma and work for the Oklahoma City Thunder. They were bad for several years before finally being a championship team. So, like I said, Adam Silver, I've given him credit for a number of things, but this is one of those situations where, he kind of created a shitstorm of his own making, and he's gonna have to figure out a way to solve it without hurting the possibility of teams trying to actually improve and get better, but just aren't good enough to be competitive this season or in another season where a team goes to a down year like Indiana because of injuries.
Yeah.
You can't. I don't
Gap
see
year.
why. Yeah, I don't see why you should punish a team like the Pacers who wouldn't be in the situation they're in now if Halliburton doesn't tear his Achilles, and then maybe they would have been more encouraged to go to resign and fight to keep Miles Turner, who was just an equally big loss to that team. So the Duncan's situation is going to be trying to find a way to minimize the tanking and discourage it without hurting teams that are in a dire situation that may need the draft lottery and the draft and other ways to improve the team when they don't have the luxury of going out and spending cash like an Indiana team, for example.
Go ahead, Jay. You got anything?
Yeah, I do. And my rant's right up there with yours. Straight up, this Tankapalooza monster predates Silver. His predecessor, the legendary David Stern, couldn't figure out how to deal with it either. Though, to be fair, tanking wasn't this ridiculous during Stern's time as commissioner. That being said, nothing Silver has done to this point has stemmed the tide of rampant tanking that has been eroding the shores that is competitive basketball by far too many teams each year. He has even gone so far as to say that it's worse this season than in years past. The commissioner knows this, saying, quote, overt behavior like this that prioritizes draft position over winning undermines the foundation of NBA competition, and we will respond accordingly to any further actions that compromise the integrity of our games. Additionally, we are working with our competition committee and board of governors to implement further measures to root out this type of conduct. Additionally, Silver also said that with regards to the NBA draft lottery, quote, it's time to take a fresh look at this and see whether that's an antiquated way of going about doing it. He also said that the actions taken this week that you guys referenced, the Jazz finding the Jazz $500,000 and the Indiana Pacers $100,000 for conduct detrimental to the league, believing that moves they made to rest players in games this past week violated the NBA's player participation policy in an attempt to improve their potential draft position by losing, was not a workable solution to the league's growing problem of teams being incentivized to lose, aka tanking, as it would, quote, lead to a very unhealthy relationships between us and our teams. But what's the solution? The first one that comes to mind for me, something that Rabbi alluded to in his rant, is stop allowing protections on first-round draft picks used in trades, as they've basically become a way to manipulate or circumvent the rules of the draft lottery, which is set up to ensure that a team finishing in the bottom 4 of the NBA standings can fall no further in the lottery than the 8th pick. A team that finishes the season with the league's 5th worst record has just a 0.6% chance of dropping in the lottery, receiving the number 9 pick. Both teams find this past week have such protections on 2026 first rounders. For the Jazz, if theirs falls outside the top 8, that pick conveys to OKC, like they need another first-round pick, right? That gives the Jazz added incentives to pile up as many losses as possible this season. For the Pacers, as part of the multiplayer trade that brought them center Ivica Zubac from the Clippers, they included a 2026 first-rounder that will convey to LA if it lands between the 5th and the 9th spots in this year's NBA draft lottery. That pick lands in the top 4 or any spot from 10 to 14, the Pacers get to keep it, and LA will get Indiana's unprotected 2031 first-round pick instead. Pacers have a 48.1% chance to have that pick land in the top 4. Despite the association's best attempts to tweak the lottery, changes were made in 1987, 1990, 94, and 2017 in an attempt to reduce and/or remove incentives to tank. It still happens. Hell, not even creating the play-in tournament in an effort to get teams to compete for playoff spots instead of draft spots has done enough to sufficiently curtail tanking. Maybe it's time to start thinking outside the box. Removing protections on lottery picks, full stop, any and all protections, might be the lesser of two radical ideas. The more radical idea was one that David Aldridge, senior NBA columnist at The Athletic, wrote about last June, where he proposed the elimination of the NBA draft, and he's not the first person to suggest it. His premise was that if there was no incentive to lose, then teams might actually put a real effort into having a competitive, potentially winning product on the court, especially since the lottery is not doing what it was originally intended to do, get the best young players from college or overseas to the teams that actually need them in order to improve. As he noted in the piece, if you got rid of the draft, then every NBA team would have the same chance to convince that particular year's presumptive number 1 pick, which is likely to be either AJ Dybasta, Cameron Boozer, or Darren Peterson this year, that they could build a great team around them and that their organization, staff, and infrastructure were worth joining. Teams would have to prove that they were worth the trouble to secure a potential tier 1 caliber player. There was more to his proposal, but the highlight is eliminating the draft eliminates tanking.
It does, but I mean, again, it's a radical idea, but again, we don't want a Dodgers situation in any way, shape, or form.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Yeah, I don't want a Dodgers situation in the NBA. I don't think a lot of players.
And that's the thing. And here's the thing. And I know everybody's first reaction is, well, then, the Lakers and the Knicks would get all the best players. There's more to it than that. The way he laid it out would prevent that from happening in a myriad of ways. And I'll kind of give you guys a little bit of that when I do my Twitter promo at the close of the show.
Speaking of, for Jay Kaplan and Anthony Strait, I love the smell of napalm in the morning. I'm Stephen Rabinowitz.
R.I.P. Robert Duvall.
Catch us on youtube.com/onthesportslines on demand and live on facebook.com/onthesportslines. Like and subscribe to those 2 links and do whatever you want to do as Jay describes Twitter.
Our Twitter handle is at ONTH Sportslines, where you'll find a link to each new show, like tonight's, along with tidbits and nuggets from the world of sports that we think are worth your time to check out. This week, I've posted a link to that story by David Aldridge, senior NBA columnist at The Athletic, that I just referenced, where he proposed eliminating the NBA draft. He gets into how incoming players would be ranked and how the current salary cap, payroll, and contract rules would be applied, and much more. It is a thoroughly researched and well-written piece that is very much worth Adam Silver's time to think about and your time to read.
By the way, the name of the Daytona 500 winner is Tyler Reddick. If you wanted to go all the way back into earlier in the show, if you needed to go back an hour and 40
Nolan will appreciate you mentioning the Indy 500 in any shape, manner, or form.
Oh, the Daytona 500.
Daytona 500. Sorry, he'd appreciate the Indy 500 as well.
I feel like he's more of a NASCAR guy than he is an Indy 500 guy. But either way, next week, Boys of Summer, spring training. Snow still outside. We'll have all the seasons when you come in on the sports lines next time. Good night.
Night,
Good
everybody.
everyone.